The rain hammered against the diner windows as Elena Voss wiped down tables, unaware that in just hours a bleeding Mafia boss would collapse into her bed and change everything. She thought the scratches on her apartment door were from burglars, but they were death threats meant for her. The same men who murdered her parents in that accidental fire 2 years ago had finally come to collect what her father stole from them. But when Elena opens her window to a dying stranger, she doesn't just save his life. She ignites a war that will either destroy her family or forge them into something unbreakable. What Elena doesn't know is that Nico Falco, the man bleeding on her floor, is the one person who can protect her from the truth about her father's secrets. And what Nico doesn't know is that saving this waitress and her mute little brother will give him something he thought he'd lost forever: a reason to live. Subscribe and tell me where you're watching from, because this story is about to prove that sometimes the most dangerous love is the one that saves you. The rain drummed against the diner windows like angry fingers. Elena Voss wiped down the last table, her shoulders aching from the 12-hour shift. The clock above the kitchen door showed 2:47 a.m. Another long day was finally over. She untied her stained apron and grabbed her jacket from behind the counter. The manager had already left hours ago, leaving her to close up alone. Again. Elena didn't mind. The extra hours meant more money. And Max needed new shoes. The thought of her little brother made her move faster. He'd been scared when she left for work that morning. Someone had been hanging around their apartment building, watching, asking questions. Elena locked the diner door and stepped into the cold night. The streets were empty except for a few parked cars. She pulled her jacket tighter and started walking. Their apartment was only 6 blocks away, but it felt like 6 miles when you were alone. The sound of her footsteps echoed off the buildings. Click, click, click. She walked faster. A cat knocked over a trash can in the alley behind her. Elena jumped, her heart pounding. She laughed at herself. Just a cat. But she didn't slow down. The apartment building came into view. 3 stories of old brick and broken dreams. Most of the windows were dark. Working people lived here. People who got up early and went to bed tired. Elena climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor. The hallway smelled like cooking oil and old cigarettes. She pulled out her keys and stopped. The door to apartment 2B was different. There were scratches around the lock, fresh ones. Elena's blood went cold. She fumbled with her keys and opened the door as quietly as she could. "Max," she whispered. A small shape moved on the bed in the corner. Max sat up, his dark hair messy from sleep. He pointed to the door with wide, scared eyes. Elena rushed to him. He was only 7 years old, but he hadn't spoken a word since their parents died in the fire 2 years ago. The doctors said it was trauma. Elena said it was a broken heart. She sat on the bed and pulled him close. "What happened, sweetheart?" Max pointed to the door again. Then he made a knocking motion with his fist. "Someone tried to get in?" He nodded. "When?" Max held up 3 fingers. 3 hours ago, while she was at work. Elena's stomach twisted. She got up and checked the locks. The deadbolt was solid, but the scratches told a story. Someone had tried to pick it. Someone who knew what they were doing. She went back to Max and held him tight. "It's okay. I'm here now. We're safe." But she didn't feel safe. And from the way Max trembled against her, neither did he. They lay down together on the small bed. Elena stared at the ceiling and listened. Every sound made her tense. A door closing somewhere in the building, footsteps in the hall, car engines on the street below. Then she heard voices in the alley behind their building, men's voices, angry and low. Elena got up and went to the window. She pulled the curtain back just a little. 3 men stood under the streetlight. They were looking up at the building. One of them pointed at her window. Her heart stopped. The men started walking toward the building entrance. Elena grabbed Max and pulled him into the tiny bathroom. She locked the door and put her finger to her lips. Max nodded. He understood danger better than any 7-year-old should. Heavy footsteps came up the stairs. They stopped outside her door. Knock, knock, knock. Elena held her breath. Max pressed against her side. "Elena Voss?" a voice called. "We know you're in there." She didn't answer. "We just want to talk." The doorknob turned. The scratches around the lock made more sense now. They had been practicing, but the deadbolt held. "Maybe she's not home," another voice said. "The neighbor said she came back an hour ago." Elena's mind raced. Mrs. Peterson from down the hall must have seen her come in. The old woman meant well, but she talked too much. The men tried the door again, then they gave up and went back downstairs. Elena waited 10 more minutes before leaving the bathroom. She went to the window and looked down. The men were gone, but she knew they would be back. She made coffee with shaking hands. Max sat at their tiny kitchen table and watched her. His eyes were too old for his young face, too knowing. "I don't know what they wanted," Elena said, "but we'll figure it out." Max reached across the table and took her hand. It was his way of saying he trusted her, that he knew she would keep him safe. Elena squeezed his fingers. She just hoped she could keep that promise. The sun came up slowly through their dirty windows. Elena hadn't slept at all. She made breakfast and got Max ready for school. Everything seemed normal in the morning light. But the scratches on the door were still there. "Stay close to Mrs. Garcia today," Elena told Max as they walked to the bus stop. Mrs. Garcia was his teacher, a kind woman who understood that Max was special. "Don't talk to strangers, and if anything feels wrong, you find a grown-up you trust." Max nodded and hugged her goodbye. Elena watched the school bus drive away and wished she could protect him from the whole world. She walked to the diner for her morning shift. The same streets that had scared her last night looked different in the sunshine. Normal, safe, but safety was just an illusion. Elena had learned that the hard way. The diner was busy during breakfast. Truckers stopping for coffee, construction workers grabbing sandwiches, regular people living regular lives. Elena poured coffee and took orders and tried to forget about the men at her door, but her hands still shook a little when she carried the plates. At 10 o'clock, her manager called her over. "Elena, we need to talk." Her stomach dropped. "Is everything okay, Mr. Peterson?" "Someone came by this morning. Before we opened, they were asking about you." "What kind of questions?" "Your address, your schedule, when you get off work." Mr. Peterson looked worried. They said they were old friends, but something didn't feel right. Elena's coffee cup slipped from her hand. It crashed on the floor, sending hot coffee everywhere. "I'm sorry," she said, grabbing a towel. "I'll clean it up." "Leave it. Are you in some kind of trouble?" "I don't know." Elena's voice was barely a whisper. "I really don't know." Mr. Peterson helped her clean up the coffee. "Maybe you should go home early today. Take tomorrow off too. Let things cool down." Elena wanted to argue. She needed the money, but she also needed to be alive to spend it. "Thank you," she said. She gathered her things and left through the back door. The alley behind the diner was quiet. Too quiet. Elena started walking home, but she felt eyes on her. She turned around twice, but no one was there. Just parked cars and empty sidewalks. The feeling followed her all the way home. Their apartment felt smaller when she walked in. The scratches on the door looked deeper. The shadows in the corners seemed darker. Elena sat on the bed and tried to think. Who were those men? What did they want? She had no enemies, no secrets, no money worth stealing. She was nobody special. Just a waitress trying to raise her little brother. but somebody thought she was important enough to scare, important enough to threaten. The afternoon crawled by like a wounded animal. Elena cleaned the apartment twice. She checked the locks 3 times. She made a grocery list and threw it away. At 3:30, she walked to the school to pick up Max. Usually he rode the bus home, but not today. Today she would walk him home herself. Max smiled when he saw her waiting by the playground. He ran over and hugged her legs. "Surprise," Elena said. "I got off work early." They walked home hand in hand. Max chattered to her in his silent way, pointing at dogs and birds and interesting clouds. For a few blocks, Elena almost felt normal again. Then she saw the black car. It was parked across from their building. The windows were tinted, but she could see shapes inside. 2 men, maybe 3. Elena steered Max around the corner to the bodega. They bought milk they didn't need and bread they already had. She kept looking out the window. The car was still there. "We're going to play a game," Elena told Max. "We're going to go up the back stairs, like spies." Max's eyes lit up. He loved spy games. They went around to the alley behind the building. The fire escape led to their floor. Elena had used it before when she forgot her keys. They climbed up carefully. Elena helped Max through their bedroom window. Then she climbed in after him. The apartment felt different when you entered through the window, like a secret hideout, like a place where you could be safe. Elena made dinner while Max did his homework at the kitchen table. She kept the curtains closed and the lights low. The black car might still be out there, but at least they were inside. As the sun set, Elena heard footsteps in the alley below their window. Slow, careful footsteps, like someone trying not to be heard. She turned off the kitchen light and went to the window. She lifted the curtain just enough to see out. A man stood in the shadows by the dumpster. He was looking up at their window. Elena's breath caught. The man was big and dangerous looking, but he wasn't one of the men from last night. This one was different, younger, and he was hurt. Even in the dim light, she could see dark stains on his shirt. Blood. The man swayed on his feet. He reached out to steady himself against the wall. Then he looked up at Elena's window again. Their eyes met through the glass. Elena should have been scared. She should have called the police. But something in the man's eyes stopped her. He wasn't looking at her like a threat. He was looking at her like a man who had nowhere else to go. The sound of car doors slamming echoed from the street. The man in the alley tensed and looked toward the front of the building. "Find him!" a voice shouted. "He can't have gone far." The injured man looked around frantically. There was nowhere to hide in the alley, nowhere to run. Elena made a decision that would change everything. She opened the window. "Up here," she whispered. "Quickly." The man looked at her with surprise. Then he grabbed the fire escape ladder and started climbing. Elena stepped back as he reached the window. He was bigger up close, broader. The blood on his shirt was fresh. "Please," he said. His voice was rough with pain. "They'll kill me if they find me." Elena heard footsteps in the hallway outside her apartment. Someone was checking doors. She looked at the injured man. Then she looked at Max, who had stopped doing his homework and was watching with wide eyes. "Get in," Elena said. The man climbed through the window and collapsed on her floor. Elena closed the window and pulled the curtains tight. Knock, knock, knock. The sound came from her front door. Elena's blood turned to ice. "Elena Voss, police. We need to ask you some questions." But Elena knew they weren't police. Real police didn't scratch at your locks in the middle of the night. The injured man tried to sit up. Elena put her hand on his shoulder and shook her head. "Stay down." "I'm coming," Elena called out. She walked to the door but didn't open it. "What's this about?" "There's been a break-in in the building. We're checking on all the residents. Elena looked through the peephole. 3 men stood in the hallway. They wore dark suits and serious expressions. They looked more like gangsters than cops. "I'm fine," Elena said. "Nothing's been disturbed." "We need to see for ourselves. Open the door." Elena's hands shook as she pressed them against the door. "I'm not dressed. Can you come back in the morning?" "This won't take long." The doorknob turned. Elena held her breath. The deadbolt would hold. It had to. The men tried the door for a long moment. Then Elena heard them talking quietly among themselves. "She's lying." "Maybe, but we can't break down doors. Too much noise. Victor won't like this." "Victor can wait. We'll watch the building tonight. She has to come out eventually." The footsteps moved away from her door. Elena waited until she couldn't hear them anymore. Then she slumped against the wall. The injured man was watching her from the floor. His face was pale, but his eyes were alert. "Thank you," he said. Elena looked at Max. Her little brother was staring at the stranger with curiosity instead of fear. That was a good sign. Max had good instincts about people. "You're bleeding," Elena said. The man looked down at his shirt. "It's not as bad as it looks." "That's what men always say." Elena went to the bathroom and came back with her first aid kit. "Can you sit on the bed?" The man struggled to his feet. He was tall and strong, but he moved like someone who was hurt. Elena helped him to the bed. Up close, she could see he was handsome in a rough way. Dark hair, strong jaw, eyes that had seen too much. There was a scar on his cheek that looked old. "What's your name?" Elena asked as she opened the first aid kit. The man hesitated. "Nico." "I'm Elena. This is my brother Max." Nico nodded at Max. "Hello, Max." Max waved shyly from the kitchen table. Elena lifted Nico's shirt to look at his wounds. There were 2 cuts on his side, deep but not life-threatening. Someone had tried to hurt him with a knife. "This needs stitches," Elena said. "I can't go to a hospital." "I figured." Elena had worked at the diner long enough to see her share of people who couldn't go to hospitals. "I can clean it and bandage it, but it's going to hurt. I can handle pain." Elena got to work. Nico didn't make a sound as she cleaned the cuts. His jaw was tight, but his eyes stayed calm. "Who were those men?" Elena asked as she worked. "Bad people." "Are you a bad person too?" Nico looked at her for a long moment. "Probably." Elena should have been scared, but something about his honesty made her trust him a little. "Why are they after you?" "Business disagreement." "Must have been some disagreement." Nico almost smiled. "You could say that." Elena finished cleaning the wounds and started wrapping them with bandages. Her hands moved carefully, gently. She had practiced taking care of people. First her parents after the fire, then Max after their parents died. "There," she said when she was done. "That should hold for a while." "Thank you." Nico started to get up. "I should go." "Where?" He didn't have an answer for that. "Those men are watching the building," Elena said. "They're waiting for you to leave." Nico looked at the window, then at the door, then at Max, who was still watching them with curious eyes. "I can't stay here," Nico said. "It's not safe for you." "It's not safe for us anyway." Elena sat down next to him on the bed. "They came here looking for me before they knew about you. I don't know why, but they want something from me." Nico's eyes sharpened. "What did you do?" "Nothing. I'm nobody. I work at a diner and take care of my brother. I don't even have any money worth stealing." "Someone thinks you do." Elena shook her head. "I don't understand any of this." They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, the city hummed with its nighttime sounds. Cars, sirens, the distant sound of music from a bar down the street. Max got up from the kitchen table and walked over to them. He held out a glass of water to Nico. "Thank you," Nico said, taking the glass. His voice was softer when he talked to Max. Max smiled and went back to his homework. "He doesn't talk," Elena said, "but he understands everything." "What happened to him?" "Our parents died in a fire. Max saw it happen. The doctors say the shock took away his voice." Nico nodded. "Trauma does that sometimes." He sounded like he knew about trauma, like he'd seen it before. "What about your family?" Elena asked. Nico's face went cold. "I don't have family." The way he said it made Elena think he had once, and something bad had happened to them too. "I'm sorry," she said. "Don't be. It was a long time ago." But Elena could see it wasn't. Not really. Some hurts never got old. They sat together as the night got darker. Elena made coffee and heated up leftover soup. Nico ate carefully, like someone who wasn't used to home cooking. Max finished his homework and came to sit with them. He showed Nico a drawing he had made at school. It was a picture of a house with a family standing in front of it, a mother, a father, and a little boy. "That's very good," Nico said. "You're a talented artist." Max beamed and ran to get his other drawings. "He likes you," Elena said. "Kids usually do. They can tell when someone won't hurt them." "And you won't?" Nico looked at her seriously. "Never. Not you or him." Elena believed him. She didn't know why, but she did. Max came back with a stack of drawings. He showed them to Nico one by one, pictures of dogs and cars and superheroes, normal 7-year-old things. Then he showed a drawing that made Elena's breath catch. It was a picture of fire, red and orange flames reaching up to a black sky. 2 figures lay on the ground. A little boy stood nearby, crying. Max had never shown that drawing to anyone before. Nico looked at the picture for a long time. Then he looked at Max. "It's scary when bad things happen," he said gently. "But you survived. That makes you brave." Max nodded and pointed to Elena. Then he pointed to himself. Then he pointed to Nico. "He thinks we're all the same," Elena said. "All survivors. Maybe we are." Elena looked at this stranger sitting in her apartment. This dangerous man who spoke gently to her brother, who had been stabbed but worried about their safety instead of his own. She was making a mistake. She knew it. But she was going to make it anyway. "You can stay tonight," Elena said, "until it's safe to leave." Nico shook his head. "I can't. Those men aren't just after you. They're after me, too. For some reason I don't understand." Elena stood up and started clearing the dishes. "Maybe we're safer together than apart." Nico watched her move around the small apartment. She was graceful despite her exhaustion, strong despite her fear. "What if I bring more danger?" "What if you don't?" Elena turned to face him. "What if you're the only thing standing between us and whatever those men want?" It was a crazy idea. Elena knew it. But crazy was better than helpless. Nico looked at Max, who was putting his drawings away carefully. Then he looked at Elena. "One night," he said. "Then I'm gone." But even as he said it, both of them knew it wouldn't be that simple. Nothing ever was. Elena made up a bed on the floor with extra blankets and pillows. Nico insisted he didn't need anything, but she could see he was exhausted. The blood loss and stress had worn him out. "The bathroom's through there," Elena said. "There are clean towels on the shelf." "Thank you." Elena tucked Max into bed and kissed his forehead. "Sweet dreams, little man." Max hugged her tight and whispered something so quietly she almost missed it. "Thank you," he said. Elena's heart stopped. Max had spoken. For the first time in 2 years, her brother had said actual words. She looked over at Nico, who was pretending not to have heard. but she could see the small smile on his face. Maybe bringing him home hadn't been a mistake after all. Elena turned off the lights and lay down on the bed. Max curled up next to her like he always did. Nico settled on the makeshift bed on the floor. The apartment was quiet except for the sound of breathing. 3 people who had found each other by accident. 3 broken people who might be a little less broken together. Outside, the city slept restlessly. And somewhere in the darkness, dangerous men waited and planned. But inside apartment 2B, Elena finally felt safe enough to close her eyes. For the first time in months, she wasn't afraid of tomorrow. Elena woke to the smell of coffee and something she hadn't smelled in years: bacon cooking. She sat up quickly, disoriented. Sunlight streamed through the curtains. Max's side of the bed was empty. Her heart jumped. Then she heard quiet voices from the kitchen. Elena padded barefoot across the cold floor and peered around the corner. Nico stood at her tiny stove, carefully turning strips of bacon in her old pan. Max sat at the table, watching with fascination. "Morning," Nico said without turning around. "Hope you don't mind. I found some stuff in your fridge." Elena rubbed her eyes. She must have slept harder than she thought. "What time is it?" "Almost 9. You needed the rest." Elena looked at Max. "Why didn't you wake me up for school?" Nico turned around, holding the spatula. "I thought it might be better if he stayed home today. Until we figure out what those men want." Elena's stomach twisted. In the morning light, yesterday felt like a bad dream. But the bandages under Nico's shirt were real. The scratches on her door were real. "You're right," she said. Nico served bacon and eggs on her mismatched plates. Real breakfast food. Elena couldn't remember the last time she'd had anything more than toast and coffee in the morning. "Where did this come from?" she asked. "I went out early, before sunrise." Nico sat down across from her. Needed to see what was happening outside. Elena's blood went cold. "You left?" "Just for 20 minutes. The black car was gone, but there's a new one parked down the block. Different men." Elena pushed her eggs around her plate. "They're taking shifts." "Looks like it." Max reached across the table and touched Elena's hand. He pointed to his mouth and then to Nico. He was trying to tell her something. "What is it, sweetheart?" Max made a talking gesture with his hands. Then he pointed to Nico again. Elena's eyes widened. "You talked to Nico?" Max nodded proudly. Elena looked at Nico. "He spoke to you?" "Just a few words. Asked if you were okay. Smart kid." Elena felt tears prick her eyes. Max hadn't spoken to anyone except her last night. But he was trying to talk again. After 2 years of silence, he was finding his voice. "That's wonderful, Max," she said. Max beamed and went back to eating his bacon. Elena's phone rang. She looked at the number and groaned. The diner. "Hello, Mr. Peterson." "Elena? Thank God. I was worried when you didn't come in this morning." Elena had completely forgotten about work. She was supposed to open at 7. "I'm sorry. I'm not feeling well." "Those men came back. This morning. They were asking more questions." Elena's grip tightened on the phone. "What kind of questions?" "They wanted to know if you had any friends, any family. They seem very interested in your little brother." Elena's blood turned to ice. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing. I told them I mind my own business." Mr. Peterson paused. "Elena, these aren't the kind of men you want asking about you. Maybe you should call the police." "Maybe." Elena knew she couldn't. Not with Nico sitting at her kitchen table. "Mr. Peterson, can I take a few days off? Personal emergency." "Of course. But be careful, Elena. Whatever this is, it's serious." Elena hung up and sat down hard in her chair. Nico was watching her with sharp eyes. They're asking about Max now, she said. Nico's face went dark. They won't touch him. The way he said it made Elena believe him. There was something dangerous in his voice, something that promised violence. "Who are you?" Elena asked. "Really?" Nico finished his coffee before answering. "Someone who understands men like that. Someone who knows how they think." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I can give you right now." Elena wanted to push, but something in Nico's eyes warned her not to. He had secrets, dark ones, but they would have to trust each other anyway. Max got up from the table and brought his empty plate to the sink. Then he walked over to Nico and tugged on his sleeve. Nico looked down at him. "What is it?" Max pointed to his drawing pad on the counter. Then he made a writing motion with his hand. "You want to draw?" Max nodded. "Okay, let's draw." They sat on the floor by the window. Max opened his pad and started sketching. Elena watched from the kitchen as her quiet brother showed his pictures to this dangerous stranger. Nico was patient. He asked questions about the drawings. He listened when Max tried to explain things with his hands. He treated Max like his words mattered, even when there were no words at all. Elena's phone buzzed, a text message from a number she didn't recognize. "We know about your brother. Give us what we want or he gets hurt." Elena's hand started shaking. She showed the phone to Nico. His face went stone cold. "They're escalating." "What do they want from me? I don't have anything worth threatening a child over. Money, information, revenge." Nico stood up. "Could be anything." "Well, I don't have money. I don't know any information, and I've never done anything to anyone." Nico looked at her carefully. "What about your parents? Did they ever mention being in trouble? Owing money?" "No, they were good people. Dad worked construction. Mom cleaned houses. They saved every penny for Max and me." "What about after they died? Did anyone come around asking questions?" Elena thought back to those terrible months after the fire. Social workers, insurance people, lawyers handling the settlement. "The insurance company paid out eventually, $50,000. I put it in a college fund for Max." Nico went very still. "50,000? It's not much, but Elena." Nico's voice was urgent. "Where's that money now?" "In a savings account at First National Bank." "Why?" "Someone thinks you have access to a lot more than $50,000. Elena shook her head. "That's impossible." "Is it? Did your parents have any friends you didn't know about? Any business dealings they kept quiet?" "No, I would have known." But even as she said it, Elena remembered things. Hushed phone calls that stopped when she walked into the room. Her father coming home late sometimes, counting cash at the kitchen table. Her mother's nervous smile when Elena asked about it. "Your father did construction?" Nico asked. "Yes, for Angelo Brothers Construction." Nico went dead silent. "What?" Elena asked. "What's wrong?" Angelo Brothers wasn't just construction. They laundered money for half the families in the city. Elena felt like the floor had dropped out from under her. "Families? Crime families? The mob?" Nico sat down heavily. "Your father might have seen things, known things, and if he did, he would have kept records," Elena whispered. "Dad kept records of everything, every job, every payment, every—" She stopped talking. Her mind was racing. After the fire, she had saved everything of her parents that survived. Photo albums, important papers, her father's work files. "Elena?" Nico's voice was gentle but urgent. "Where are your father's papers?" Elena looked toward the bedroom closet. "I have boxes, everything that didn't burn. We need to look through them. Now!" Elena went to the closet and pulled out 3 cardboard boxes. They were labeled in her father's careful handwriting, "Work files 2020 to 2022, insurance papers, and personal documents." They spread everything out on the bed: bank statements, pay stubs, work orders, insurance forms. At first, it all looked normal. Then Nico found something. "Look at this." He held up a work order from Angelo Brothers. "Your father was paid $12,000 for a 3-day job. That's not construction wages." Elena looked at the paper. Her father had written notes in the margins: addresses, names, numbers that looked like bank account information. "He was keeping track of something," she said. They found more. Dozens of work orders with inflated payments, lists of addresses that weren't construction sites, names that didn't match the official company records. "Your father was documenting their money laundering operation," Nico said, "probably as insurance. If anything happened to him, he wanted proof." "But nothing happened to him? He died in a fire." Nico looked at her with sad eyes. "Elena, fires can be set." The words hit her like a physical blow. Elena sat down hard on the bed. "No," she whispered. "It was an accident. The investigators said investigators can be bought." Elena's world tilted. Everything she thought she knew about her parents' death was wrong. They hadn't died in a tragic accident. They had been murdered. "Why didn't they come for the papers before now?" she asked. "Maybe they didn't know your father was keeping records. Maybe they thought everything burned in the fire." Nico gathered the papers together. But 2 years later, someone figured it out. Elena felt sick. Victor. Probably. He's been muscling in on Angelo Brothers territory. If he could prove they were skimming money, he could take over their operations. Max looked up from his drawing pad. He could sense the tension in the room. His eyes were worried. Elena went to him and knelt down. "It's okay, sweetheart. We're just talking." But it wasn't okay. Nothing was okay. Her phone rang. Elena looked at the number and her stomach dropped. It was the same number that had sent the threatening text. "Answer it," Nico said, "but put it on speaker." Elena's hand shook as she accepted the call. "Miss Voss," a smooth voice said, "I think it's time we met." "Who is this?" "Someone who knew your father. He was a smart man, kept detailed records of his work. I'd like to see those records." Elena looked at Nico. He nodded encouragement. "I don't know what you're talking about," Elena said. "Of course you do. Your father was very thorough. Bank accounts, addresses, names. All very interesting reading, I'm sure." "I don't have anything like that." The man laughed. It was not a nice sound. "Miss Voss, let me be clear. Your father took something that belonged to my employers. I want it back. You can give it to me willingly, or I can take it from you. The choice is yours. And if I don't have what you want, then your brother will pay the price for your father's mistakes." The line went dead. Elena stared at the phone in horror. Max was still drawing, unaware that his life had just been threatened. "They're going to hurt him," Elena whispered. "No," Nico said firmly. "They're not." "How can you stop them?" Nico was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his own phone and made a call. "Sal, it's me." Nico's voice was different now, harder, more authoritative. "I need backup at this address, full protection detail." Elena heard a voice on the other end asking questions. "Just do it," Nico said. "And Sal, this is family business now." He hung up and looked at Elena. "Help is coming." "Who was that?" "Someone I trust." "And who are you?" Elena asked again. "Really?" Nico looked at Max, who was showing him another drawing, a picture of 3 stick figures holding hands. "A family." "Someone who's going to keep you safe," Nico said. There was a knock at the door, not the angry pounding from yesterday. 3 soft knocks. Nico got up and looked through the peephole. "It's okay," he said to Elena. "It's Sal." He opened the door and a man walked in. He was older than Nico, maybe 40, with gray at his temples and kind eyes. He was dressed in an expensive suit, but he moved like someone who knew how to fight. "Boss," the man said to Nico. "Situation report?" "Boss?" Elena looked between the two men. Understanding dawned slowly. "Nico," she said carefully, "what do you do for work?" Nico and Sal exchanged a look. "I manage family business," Nico said. Elena's legs went weak. She sat down on the bed before she fell down. "You're one of them. You're—" She couldn't say the word. "Mafia," Nico finished for her. "Yes." Elena looked at Max, who was still drawing peacefully. Her little brother was sitting in a room with 2 Mafia members, and he was safer than he'd been in months. "Are you going to hurt us?" she asked. "Never," Nico said, "but you hurt other people." Nico didn't deny it. "I protect my family, whatever it takes." "We're not your family." Nico looked at Max again. The little boy had finished his drawing and was holding it up proudly. It showed all of them together in the apartment. Safe. Happy. "Maybe you are," Nico said quietly. Sal cleared his throat. "Boss, we should discuss security arrangements." They talked in low voices by the window. Elena caught pieces of their conversation. Guard rotations, safe houses, exit strategies. Her life had become something from a movie. A dangerous movie where children got hurt and good people got killed. But for the first time since the threatening phone call, Elena felt like she could breathe. Nico might be dangerous. He might be a criminal. But he was also the first person in 2 years who made her feel truly protected. And Max trusted him. That had to count for something. The afternoon passed in a blur of activity. Sal made phone calls. Nico studied the papers from her father's files. Elena tried to keep Max occupied while their world changed around them. At 4 o'clock, there was another knock at the door. Sal checked the peephole and nodded to Nico. "Reinforcements," Nico said. 2 more men came in. They were younger than Sal, but moved with the same quiet confidence. They took positions by the windows and spoke into tiny microphones. Elena's apartment felt like a war room. "How long is this going to last?" she asked Nico. "Until we find Victor and end this." "End it how?" Nico's smile was cold. "However we have to." Elena shivered. She was beginning to understand the kind of man she had invited into her home. The kind of man who could make problems disappear permanently. "I want to take Max somewhere safe," she said. "This is the safest place for him right now." "Surrounded by armed men?" "Protected by armed men," Nico corrected. "There's a difference." Max looked up from his drawing pad. He had been listening to their conversation with his sharp 7-year-old ears. He walked over to Nico and tugged on his sleeve again. "What is it, buddy?" Max pointed to the window. Then he made a scary face and monster claws with his hands. "Bad guys outside?" Nico asked. Max nodded seriously. "And you want to know if the good guys will stop them?" Another nod. Nico knelt down so he was at Max's eye level. "I promise you, Max, no one is going to hurt you or your sister, not while I'm here." Max studied Nico's face for a long moment. Then he hugged him. Elena's heart squeezed tight. Max had only hugged 3 people in his whole life: her, their mother, their father. Now he was hugging a Mafia boss, and somehow that felt exactly right. As evening fell, Elena cooked dinner for an army. 7 people now filled her tiny apartment. It should have felt crowded and chaotic. Instead, it felt like family. The men were respectful and quiet. They played cards with Max and complimented Elena's cooking. When she apologized for not having enough chairs, they insisted the floor was fine. "You don't have to do this," Elena told Nico as they washed dishes together. "We're strangers. This isn't your problem." "Yes, it is." "Why?" Nico was quiet for a long time. "Because I've been where Max is, scared, alone, watching bad things happen to the people I love. What happened to your family? Nico's hands stilled in the soapy water. They were killed, my wife and daughter, 3 years ago. Elena's breath caught. I'm sorry. Victor ordered their deaths to send me a message. Elena understood now. This wasn't just about protecting her and Max. This was personal. Is that why you're here? For revenge? Partly. Nico looked at her. But not entirely. Not anymore. Their eyes met over the sink full of dishes. Something passed between them. Something warm and dangerous and impossible. Elena was falling for a man who lived in a world of violence, a man who solved problems with threats and bullets, a man who could disappear from her life as suddenly as he had appeared. It was stupid. It was reckless. It was also inevitable. Elena, Nico said softly. I know, she whispered. I know it's crazy. We barely know each other. But I trust you, and Max trusts you. That's enough for now. Nico reached up and touched her face gently. I'm not a good man. You're good to us. That's not the same thing. Elena leaned into his touch. It's the only thing that matters. They stood in her tiny kitchen, surrounded by dangerous men and dirty dishes and the smell of home cooking. It should have been ordinary. Instead, it felt like the most romantic moment of Elena's life. Outside, the city hummed with evening traffic. Victor's men were still out there somewhere, planning and waiting, but inside apartment 2B, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Elena woke to the sound of breaking glass. She sat up in bed, heart pounding. Max was still asleep beside her, but the apartment was too quiet. Where were Nico's men? They had been taking shifts all night, watching the windows and doors. Elena slipped out of bed and tiptoed toward the living room. The floorboard creaked under her foot. Elena. Nico's voice came from the darkness. Get Max and stay in the bedroom. She heard the sound of guns being drawn. Her blood turned to ice. What's happening? She whispered. They found us. Elena ran back to the bedroom and shook Max awake. He sat up, instantly alert. Even asleep, he knew to be ready for danger. We need to hide, Elena whispered, like a game. Max nodded and followed her to the closet. They squeezed inside behind the winter coats that smelled like mothballs and old fabric softener. Through the thin walls, Elena heard men moving around her apartment. Heavy footsteps, whispered commands, the sound of furniture being overturned. Where is she? A voice demanded. Not here, Sal replied. His voice was steady, calm. You missed them. We saw lights on an hour ago. Could have been anyone. This is an apartment building. Elena pressed Max closer to her. Her little brother was trembling, but he didn't make a sound. He had learned too young how to be scared quietly. Search every room, the first voice ordered. Elena heard footsteps coming toward the bedroom. She held her breath and pulled Max deeper into the coats. The closet door opened. A flashlight beam swept across the hanging clothes. Elena could see the light through the fabric of her father's old work jacket. The beam paused, moved on, then came back. The man was being thorough. A hand reached into the closet and pushed the clothes aside. Elena closed her eyes and prayed. Nothing, the man called out. The closet door closed. Elena waited until the footsteps moved away before she breathed again. They had been inches from discovery. If Max had coughed or moved or made any sound at all. She didn't want to think about what would have happened. More sounds from the living room. Crashes, something breaking. This is a waste of time, someone said. They're not here. Victor wants those papers. Victor wants a lot of things. Elena heard the front door open and close, car engines starting outside. Then silence. After what felt like hours, Nico's voice came through the bedroom door. Elena, it's safe. She pushed open the closet door and helped Max climb out. Her legs were shaky, but she made herself walk to the living room. Her apartment was destroyed, furniture overturned, cushions slashed, her father's papers scattered across the floor like snow. 2 of Nico's men were missing. Sal was sitting on the floor, pressing a bloody cloth to his head. Another man was checking the locks on the windows. "Where's Tony and Marco?" Nico asked. "Taken," Sal said grimly. "They grabbed them first, used them to get inside." Elena's stomach lurched. "Are they?" "Alive," Sal assured her. "For now. Victor wants to trade them for you." Elena looked at the chaos of her home. Everything she and Max owned was ruined. Their clothes, their pictures, Max's drawings. Max walked over to where his art supplies lay scattered and picked up a broken crayon. He stared at it for a moment, then started to cry. Silent tears that broke Elena's heart. She knelt down and pulled him into her arms. "It's okay, sweetheart. We can get new crayons, new paper. Everything can be replaced." But Max shook his head. He pointed to a torn drawing on the floor. It was the picture of their parents, the only one he had drawn from memory. It was destroyed. Elena felt tears sting her own eyes. "I'm so sorry, baby." Nico walked over and carefully picked up the torn pieces of the drawing. He studied them for a moment. "I know someone who can fix this," he said, gently. "A friend of mine is very good with art. She can make it look brand new." Max looked up at him with hope in his eyes. "Really?" Elena's breath caught. Max had spoken again. A full word, clear and strong. Nico smiled. "Really? I promise." Max wiped his nose and nodded. He trusted Nico's promises. Elena wished she could trust them too, but she was beginning to understand that in Nico's world, promises were fragile things. Good intentions could be shattered as easily as windows and dreams. "We can't stay here," Nico said. "They know where you live now." Elena looked around her destroyed apartment. Everything she and Max had built together was gone. Their safe place, their sanctuary. "Where can we go?" she asked. "I have a place. It's secure." Elena hesitated. Going with Nico meant stepping fully into his world, the world that had gotten her parents killed, the world that put children in danger. But staying meant putting Max at risk. "Okay," she said, "but I want your word that Max stays safe. Whatever happens to me, he stays safe." "Nothing's going to happen to you. Promise me." Nico looked her in the eyes. "I promise. Both of you stay safe, no matter what." They gathered what they could salvage. Some clothes, important papers, Max's remaining art supplies. Everything fit into 2 small bags. Elena took one last look around the apartment. It hadn't been much. 1 bedroom, a tiny kitchen, windows that looked out on an alley. But it had been theirs. The first place where she and Max had been truly alone, where they had learned to take care of each other. Now it was just another crime scene. "Ready?" Nico asked gently. Elena nodded and took Max's hand. They walked out the door and didn't look back. Nico's car was black and expensive, the kind of car Elena had only seen in movies. The seats were leather and the windows were tinted so dark she couldn't see out. Max was fascinated. He ran his small hands along the smooth dashboard and stared at all the buttons. "Can I play music?" he asked. Nico smiled. "Of course." Classical music filled the car, something soft and beautiful that Elena didn't recognize. "You like classical music?" she asked Nico. "My daughter did. She used to dance to this song." Elena heard the past tense. His daughter, the one who had been killed. "What was her name?" "Sophia. She was 5 years old." Nico's voice was quiet. "She wanted to be a ballerina." Elena watched him drive through the empty streets. His hands were steady on the wheel, but she could see the pain in his eyes. Pain that would never fully heal. Tell me about her, Elena said. Nico glanced at her in surprise. Most people avoided talking about dead children. Too painful, too real. But Elena understood grief. She knew that sometimes the only comfort was sharing memories. She was fearless, Nico said. She would climb anything, trees, playground equipment, the kitchen counters when Maria wasn't looking. He smiled a little. She had these wild curls that never stayed in place, and she laughed at everything, even bad jokes. She sounds wonderful. She was. Max leaned forward from the back seat. Did she like to draw? She loved to draw. She made pictures for everyone. The refrigerator was covered with them. I draw pictures too. I've seen them. You're very talented. Sophia would have liked you. Elena felt her heart squeeze. This dangerous man talking so gently about his lost daughter. This killer who had bought her brother new crayons because a drawing got torn. How was she supposed to make sense of him? They drove through parts of the city Elena had never seen. Neighborhoods with big houses and tall gates. Places where people had money and security systems and gardeners who came twice a week. Nico pulled into the driveway of a house that looked like something from a magazine. 3 stories of brick and glass, a garden with actual flowers, a fountain in the front yard. "This is your house?" Elena asked. "One of them." Of course. Rich criminals probably had lots of houses. The inside was even more impressive. High ceilings, expensive furniture, art on the walls that looked like it belonged in a museum. Max stood in the foyer and stared up at the crystal chandelier hanging above their heads. "Wow," he whispered. A woman appeared from the kitchen. She was older, maybe 60, with kind eyes and flour on her apron. "Nico," she said with obvious relief, "thank God you're safe. Rosa, this is Elena and Max. They'll be staying with us for a while." Rosa looked at Elena and Max with the sharp eyes of someone who had raised children of her own. "You look tired," she said to Elena, "and hungry, both of you." Before Elena could protest, Rosa was bustling around them, taking their coats, leading them to the kitchen, pulling food from the refrigerator. "I'm not really hungry," Elena said. "Everyone's hungry," Rosa replied firmly. "They just don't always know it." The kitchen was bigger than Elena's entire apartment had been, an island in the center with bar stools, professional appliances, windows that looked out on a garden lit with soft lights. Max climbed onto one of the bar stools and watched Rosa work. She moved around the kitchen like a dancer, pulling together a meal from ingredients Elena couldn't even identify. "Rosa's been with my family for 20 years, Nico explained. "She practically raised me after my parents died." "Your parents died too?" Elena asked. "Car accident. I was 16. Elena tried to imagine teenage Nico, orphaned and angry and probably already dangerous. She wondered who had taken care of him, who had made sure he ate and did his homework and remembered to be human sometimes. "Rosa did," Nico said, as if he could read her thoughts. Rosa set plates in front of them, some kind of pasta with sauce that smelled like heaven, bread that was still warm from the oven, a salad with vegetables Elena was pretty sure she'd never seen before. Max took a bite and his eyes went wide. "This is really good." "Thank you, sweetheart," Rosa said. "There's plenty more if you want seconds." Elena ate slowly, savoring flavors she'd never experienced. At the diner, she ate whatever the kitchen made wrong or the customers sent back. At home, it was canned soup and peanut butter sandwiches. This was real cooking. Food made with love and skill and ingredients that cost more than Elena made in a day. "Where will we sleep?" Elena asked. "There are guest rooms upstairs," Nico said. Rosa prepared 2 rooms, one for you, one for Max. Elena's fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Separate rooms? I thought Max might like his own space. There are toys up there, books, things Sophia used to play with. Elena's heart ached. Nico was giving Max his dead daughter's room, her toys, her books. That's very kind, Elena said, but Max has nightmares sometimes. He's used to sleeping with me. Of course, whatever makes him comfortable. After dinner, Rosa showed them upstairs. The guest room was beautiful, a queen-sized bed with soft white sheets, a sitting area by the window, a bathroom bigger than Elena's old kitchen. Max explored everything with wide eyes. He found a stuffed elephant on the dresser and looked at Nico questioningly. That was Sophia's, Nico said. She called him Peanut. I think she'd want you to have him. Max hugged the elephant carefully. Thank you. Elena felt tears threaten again. This little boy who had lost his parents. This man who had lost his child. Both of them trying to heal by taking care of each other. And somehow, she and Max had been pulled into their story. Rosa brought them pajamas and toiletries, clean towels, and extra blankets. She fussed over them like they were her own grandchildren. If you need anything in the night, just call, she said. I'm right down the hall. Elena tucked Max into the big bed and read him a story from one of Sophia's books. He fell asleep holding the stuffed elephant, more peaceful than she'd seen him in months. Elena sat by the window and looked out at the garden. Solar lights marked pathways between flower beds. A small pond reflected the moon. It was beautiful, safe, everything she'd ever wanted to give Max, and it belonged to a man who killed people for a living. There was a soft knock at the door. Nico peered in. How is he? Asleep. He loves the elephant. Good. She would have wanted someone to love it. Nico sat in the chair across from Elena. He looked tired, older than his 33 years. Thank you, Elena said, for all of this. You didn't have to. Yes, I did. They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Outside, the city hummed in the distance. But here, in this beautiful room, it felt like they were a world away from danger. What happens now? Elena asked. We find Victor. We end this. And then? Nico was quiet for a long time. I don't know. Elena studied his face in the moonlight. What do you want to happen? Things I can't have. Like what? Nico looked at Max sleeping peacefully in the big bed. A family, a normal life. Kids who don't have nightmares about bad men. You could have those things. Not in my world. So leave your world. Nico smiled sadly. It's not that simple. You don't just quit the family business. Why not? Because they don't let you, and because... He struggled for words. Because it's who I am. It's all I know how to be. Elena wanted to argue, to tell him he could be anything he wanted. But she was beginning to understand that Nico's chains were stronger than law or fear. They were made of loyalty and blood and choices that couldn't be undone. Will you stay with us tonight? Elena asked. Max feels safer when you're close. Just Max? Elena met his eyes. No, not just Max. Nico moved to the chair by the bed, close enough to protect them, far enough to respect her space. Elena lay down next to Max and pulled the soft blankets up to her chin. For the first time in 2 years, she felt completely safe. Not because of the locks on the doors or the guards outside, because of the man sitting in the chair beside their bed. The man who had promised to protect them. The man who was falling in love with them as surely as they were falling in love with him. Elena closed her eyes and let herself dream of impossible things. A house with a garden. A man who came home for dinner every night. A little boy who laughed without fear. A family made from broken pieces, somehow made whole. Outside, Victor's men were planning, searching, getting closer. But inside this beautiful house, 3 damaged souls had found each other. And for tonight, that was enough. Elena woke to silence. Not the comfortable quiet of safety, but the wrong kind of silence. The kind that meant something had gone very bad. The chair where Nico had been sitting was empty. Max was still asleep beside her, clutching Sophia's elephant. But the house felt different. Hollow. Elena slipped out of bed and padded to the window. The garden below was dark. No movement, no guards that she could see. Her heart started to race. She grabbed her phone from the nightstand. No signal. The screen showed nothing but static. Elena shook Max gently awake. "Sweetheart, we need to go." Max sat up immediately. He had learned to trust her instincts about danger. "Where's Nico?" he whispered. "I don't know, but we need to find somewhere safe." Elena grabbed their bags and took Max's hand. They crept to the bedroom door and listened. The house was completely silent. Too silent. They made it halfway down the hallway before Elena heard footsteps on the stairs. Heavy boots, multiple men. Elena pulled Max into the nearest room and locked the door behind them. It was an office, dark wood furniture, books lining the walls, a window that looked out over the side yard. Elena Voss. The voice came from the hallway, smooth and cold. "I know you're here somewhere. Let's make this easy for everyone." Elena recognized the voice from the phone call. Victor. She looked around the office frantically. There had to be another way out. A back staircase, a fire escape, something. The window. It was their only option. Elena opened it as quietly as she could. Below was a flower bed, soft dirt and mulch. They could jump without getting seriously hurt. "I'm going to lower you down," she whispered to Max. "Then I'll jump after you, run to the neighbor's house and tell them to call the police." Max shook his head. "I won't leave you." "You have to. I need to know you're safe." "No." Max's voice was stronger than she'd ever heard it. "We stay together." Elena heard the doorknob turn. They were trying to get in. She lifted Max up to the window. "Climb down as far as you can, then drop. I'll be right behind you." Max hesitated for one more second, then swung his legs over the windowsill. Elena helped lower him down until he was hanging by his hands from the ledge. "Let go," she whispered. Max dropped into the flower bed with a soft thud. Elena saw him get up and brush off his pajamas. He was okay. The office door splintered. Someone was kicking it in. Elena threw her legs over the windowsill just as the door burst open. "There she is." Elena dropped into the flower bed just as hands reached for her through the window. She grabbed Max and they ran toward the neighbor's house. The yard was bigger than it had looked from upstairs. They ran across manicured grass and through carefully planned gardens. Elena's bare feet slipped on the wet grass, but she didn't slow down. Behind them, men were climbing out of the office window, shouting orders, getting closer. They reached the neighbor's fence. It was tall and wooden, built for privacy. Elena boosted Max up and over, then climbed after him. They landed in another perfect yard, another perfect house where perfect families slept safely in their beds. Elena pounded on the back door. "Help, please! Call the police!" Lights came on inside. A man appeared at the window, looking confused and frightened. "Please," Elena called. "My son and I are in danger. Call 911. The man hesitated. Elena knew how they must look. A young woman in pajamas with a scared child, running through yards in the middle of the night. But he opened the door. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Bad men are chasing us," Max said. His voice was clear and strong. "They want to hurt my sister." The man's expression changed when he heard Max's voice. Children didn't lie about things like that. "Come in," he said. "I'll call the police." Elena and Max huddled in the stranger's kitchen while he called 911. The man gave them blankets and hot chocolate. His wife came downstairs and wrapped Max in a warm robe. "The police are coming," the man said. "You're safe now." But Elena didn't feel safe. She felt empty, lost. Where was Nico? Was he hurt? Was he... She couldn't finish the thought. Through the kitchen window, she could see Victor's house. Dark now. No movement. Whatever had happened there was over. The police arrived in minutes, 2 officers who asked gentle questions and took careful notes. They were kind to Max and professional with Elena, but they couldn't give her the answers she needed. "We'll check the house," one officer said, "but if these men are as dangerous as you say, they're probably long gone." Elena nodded. She knew Victor wouldn't stick around for the police to arrive. The question was, had he gotten what he came for? "We can take you to a shelter," the other officer said. "Somewhere safe until we figure out what's going on." Elena looked at Max. He was sitting quietly, still clutching Sophia's elephant, still trusting her to make the right decisions. "Okay," she said. "Thank you." The shelter was clean and safe and depressing. Gray walls and fluorescent lights, narrow beds with thin blankets, the smell of industrial disinfectant. Elena and Max were given a small room with twin beds. A social worker brought them clothes and toiletries. A counselor asked if they needed someone to talk to. Everyone was kind, professional, helpful. But Elena felt like she was drowning. For 3 days, they waited. The police investigated Nico's house but found nothing useful. No bodies, no evidence of what had happened. The house had been cleaned professionally. Elena called the hospital, the morgue, anyone who might have information about Nico. Nothing. He had vanished as completely as if he'd never existed. On the 4th day, Max stopped talking again. Elena tried everything, reading stories, playing games, drawing pictures together. But Max had retreated back into silence. The brief weeks when he'd been finding his voice were over. Elena sat on her narrow bed and watched her brother color quietly at the small table. He was drawing the same picture over and over. 3 stick figures holding hands. A family. But now he was using black crayon to scribble over one of the figures, making it disappear. "Max," Elena said gently. "Who is that?" Max pointed to the scribbled figure. Then he pointed to the empty chair where Nico should have been sitting. Elena's heart broke into smaller pieces. She had known this would happen. She had known that getting attached to Nico was dangerous. Not because he was a criminal, but because his world was built on violence and loss. People in his world disappeared. They got killed or arrested or just decided it was safer to vanish. She should have protected Max from that, protected herself. But it was too late now. On the 5th day, a different social worker came to see them. She was younger than the others, with kind eyes and a gentle voice. "Elena, I have some news about your case." Elena looked up hopefully. Maybe they had found Nico. Maybe he was alive and safe and coming back for them. "We've been in contact with your father's former employer, Angelo Brothers Construction. They've offered to help with your living expenses while you get back on your feet." Elena's hope crumbled. What kind of help? "They have an apartment available, furnished, and they can offer you a job in their office. Nothing fancy, but it's steady work with good benefits." Elena stared at the social worker. Angelo Brothers. The company that had gotten her father killed. The company whose dirty money had started this whole nightmare. "I can't work for them." "Why not? They seem very eager to help. They said your father was a valued employee." "My father is dead because of them." The social worker looked confused. "Elena, your father died in a house fire. That was 2 years ago." "The fire wasn't an accident. Do you have proof of that?" Elena thought about the papers scattered across her destroyed apartment, the evidence that Nico had helped her understand. All of it probably gone now, burned or stolen or buried so deep that no one would ever find it. "No," she said quietly. "I don't have proof." Sometimes when we're grieving, we look for someone to blame. It's normal to want answers that make sense of our loss. Elena wanted to scream. She wanted to shake this well-meaning woman and make her understand that sometimes the world really was as dangerous as it seemed. But she didn't. She just nodded and said she would think about it. That night, Elena lay in her narrow bed and stared at the ceiling. Max was asleep in the next bed, still holding Sophia's elephant. They couldn't stay at the shelter forever. Eventually, they would have to make a choice. Accept help from Angelo brothers and hope Victor had moved on to other targets, or try to start over somewhere else with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Neither option felt safe. Elena closed her eyes and tried to imagine Nico's voice, tried to remember the way he had looked at Max with such gentleness, the way he had made her feel protected and cherished and whole. But memories weren't enough. Memories couldn't pay rent or buy food or keep a 7-year-old boy safe from nightmares. She had to be practical. She had to think about Max's future instead of her own broken heart. In the morning, she would call Angelo brothers. In the morning, she would start building a new life from the ashes of the old one. But tonight, she allowed herself to grieve for the family they had almost been. Elena was awakened by urgent whispers outside their room. She checked the clock on the nightstand. 3:17 a.m. "Are you sure it's her?" Someone was saying. "Positive. Elena Voss, room 247. Elena's blood went cold. She got up quietly and shook Max awake. "We need to go," she whispered. "Right now." Max didn't argue. He grabbed Sophia's elephant and followed Elena to the window. It was only 2 stories up, but there was no fire escape. No way down except the hallway where the voices were coming from. Elena looked around the small room desperately. There had to be something, some way to protect Max. She heard footsteps in the hallway. Coming closer. Elena grabbed the chair from the small desk and wedged it under the doorknob. It wouldn't hold for long, but it might buy them a few minutes. She opened the window and looked down. The drop was too far. They would get hurt, maybe badly. But staying meant getting caught. Elena was about to lift Max to the window when she heard a different sound. Gunshots, muffled but unmistakable. The footsteps in the hallway stopped. Then they started again, running in the opposite direction. More gunshots, closer now. Elena pulled Max away from the window and into the small bathroom. She locked the door, and they crouched in the bathtub behind the shower curtain. The gunshots stopped. The building was silent again. Then Elena heard a voice that made her heart stop. "Elena, Max, it's me. You're safe." "Nico." Elena burst out of the bathroom and ran to the door. She moved the chair and unlocked it with shaking hands. Nico stood in the hallway, wearing all black and looking like he had been through hell. There were cuts on his face and blood on his shirt, but his eyes were alive and warm and focused on her. Elena threw herself into his arms. "I thought you were dead," she sobbed against his chest. "Takes more than Victor's men to kill me," Nico said. He held her tight, stroking her hair. "I'm sorry it took so long. I had to make sure it was safe." Max appeared in the doorway, clutching his elephant. When he saw Nico, his face lit up with pure joy. "Nico!" he shouted, running to them. Nico scooped Max up in his free arm and held them both. "Hey, buddy, I missed you too." "Where were you?" Max asked. "We were scared. I was taking care of some bad men, making sure they can't hurt us anymore." Elena pulled back to look at his face. "Victor? Gone. He won't be bothering anyone ever again." Elena felt a chill run through her. She knew what gone meant in Nico's world, but she also felt relief. Victor had threatened her brother, had terrorized them and destroyed their home and their peace. Now he couldn't hurt anyone else's family the way he had hurt theirs. "What about the police?" Elena asked. "They'll be investigating the shooting." "Already taken care of." This was self-defense. Victor came to the shelter armed and dangerous. I was protecting civilians. Elena knew there was more to it than that. There always was with Nico. But she was too grateful to care about the details. "How did you find us?" "I've been watching, making sure you were safe while I dealt with Victor." Nico's voice was gentle. "I would never have let anything happen to you. We thought you were dead." "I'm sorry. I wanted to contact you, but it wasn't safe. Victor had people everywhere." Elena nodded. She understood, but understanding didn't erase the pain of the last 5 days. The fear, the loneliness, the feeling of being abandoned. "What happens now?"